They've been hiding this from you for centuries. While you've been searching for answers in approved spiritual texts and mainstream religious dogma, a shattering truth has been systematically erased from history, a truth so powerful that secret societies have killed to protect it, and ancient mystics risked everything to preserve it. What Helena Blavatsky uncovered in her forbidden explorations of Gnostic manuscripts wasn't just another spiritual teaching. It was the master key to human liberation, the exact method for breaking free from invisible forces that have manipulated humanity since before recorded history. These entities, what the ancient Gnostics called Archons, don't want you to discover what I'm about to reveal. They operate in the shadows of your consciousness, inserting thoughts you believe are your own, crafting desires that feel natural yet keep you imprisoned, and maintaining the elaborate perceptual cage you've mistaken for reality. I'm not sharing conspiracy theories or New Age fantasies. I'm revealing a cosmology that predates Christianity, a secret doctrine that inspired history's greatest minds, from Pythagoras to Jung, a system of liberation so threatening to established power that every institution has worked to bury it beneath layers of distraction and ridicule. By the end of this journey, you'll understand precisely why you've always felt that something was off about reality. You'll recognize the subtle manipulation techniques these entities use to harvest your life energy. Most importantly, you'll possess the exact step-by-step method Blavatsky extracted from ancient Gnostic texts, the method for dissolving these influences permanently and awakening the indestructible divine spark within you that these entities cannot touch. What you'll experience in the coming chapters will permanently alter how you perceive yourself and reality. You'll learn to identify the thought patterns that aren't truly yours. You'll discover why certain emotions arise precisely when you're on the verge of breakthrough. And you'll master the ancient technique for severing these invisible chains that has been hidden from humanity for millennia. This isn't just information, it's activation. The mere exposure to these forbidden truths begins a process of remembrance that the Archons have worked tirelessly to prevent. Subscribe and leave your like now, because this content is systematically suppressed on every platform. Your engagement ensures these revelations continue reaching those who sense the truth beneath the illusion. The veil is lifting. The time for remembering has come. To understand the Archons and Blavatsky's revelations about them, we must first journey back to the birth of Gnostic thought. The word gnosis itself, Greek for knowledge, hints at its essence. But this isn't intellectual knowledge. It's direct experiential knowing of ultimate reality, a remembering of what we've been conditioned to forget. The Gnostic worldview that Blavatsky later championed presents a radical cosmology. Our universe is not the creation of a perfect, loving God, but rather the flawed manifestation of a lesser deity, the demiurge, who himself was born from cosmic error. This demiurge, ignorant of the true divine realm above him, created the physical world as an imperfect copy of higher realities. To maintain control over this creation, he brought forth the Archons, from the Greek archontes, meaning rulers or authorities, to govern different aspects of material existence. These Archons aren't physical beings with horns and tails. They're subtle distortions in the fabric of consciousness itself, thought forms, energetic patterns, perceptual filters that intercept and manipulate human awareness. They don't exist out there, but operate through the human mind, creating what Blavatsky called the great illusion, Maya, that keeps us identified with our temporal personalities rather than our eternal essence. The universe is worked and guided from within outwards, wrote Blavatsky in her magnum opus, The Secret Doctrine. She understood what quantum physics now suggests. Consciousness is fundamental, preceding matter. The Archons operate precisely at this junction between mind and manifestation, distorting the clear light of awareness before it crystallizes into physical experience. This isn't merely abstract philosophy. The Nag Hammadi texts discovered in Egypt in 1945 validate much of what Blavatsky had intuited decades earlier. These ancient Gnostic manuscripts speak explicitly of Archons as the authorities of blindness and counterfeit spirits that induce forgetfulness in humans, a spiritual amnesia that makes us unable to recognize our true divine nature. What makes this understanding so revolutionary and so dangerous to established power structures is its implication. Salvation doesn't come from worshipping external deities or following dogmatic rules. It comes from direct inner knowing, from peeling away the layers of illusion to remember the divine spark within. This radical self-sovereignty threatened religious and political authorities in ancient times just as it does today. Helena Blavatsky recognized this forgotten wisdom as the golden thread running through all authentic spiritual traditions. Whether in the mystical schools of Kabbalah, Sufism, Hermeticism, or Vedanta, she found the same essential teaching about humanity's divine nature trapped in material illusion, and the same techniques for liberation. The Archons maintain their influence through our unconsciousness, our forgetting. They feed on our blind identification with transient thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Awareness itself is the solvent that dissolves their power. As the Gnostic Gospel of Philip states, ignorance is a slave, knowledge is freedom. This knowledge, this gnosis, isn't information to be memorized, but a lived recognition of your true nature beyond all conceptual overlays imposed by the archonic influence. Now I'm curious, from which city in the United States are you watching this, or from which country around the world is this content reaching you? Let me know in the comments. I'd really love to know where these ancient teachings are finding resonance today. As we move forward, prepare yourself. The first great revelation awaits, and with it, the beginning of your remembering. At the heart of Blavatsky's Gnostic revelation lies a truth so profound it can shatter your entire worldview. Within you burns an eternal flame, a fragment of pure, uncreated light, what the ancient Gnostics called the divine spark. This isn't poetic metaphor, it's literal spiritual anatomy. This spark is not of this world. It's a prisoner here, encased in layers of forgetting, conditioning, and illusion. Imagine this spark as a diamond buried in mud. The diamond remains perfect regardless of its surroundings, but its brilliance is obscured. The Archons aren't interested in the diamond itself. They cannot touch or corrupt its perfect nature. What they can do, however, is keep you so hypnotized by the patterns in the mud that you never remember the diamond's existence. The spiritual ego of man moves in eternity like a pendulum between the hours of life and death, Blavatsky wrote. But if these hours marking the periods of terrestrial and spiritual life are limited in their duration, the spiritual pilgrim himself is eternal. This pilgrim, your true nature, exists beyond the reach of the Archons, beyond the matrix of their design. The sensations are visceral when this recognition first dawns. Many who've experienced this awakening describe a sudden lightness, as if a crushing weight they'd carried so long they'd forgotten it was there suddenly lifts. Colors appear more vivid, sounds clearer, as if a dampening field has been deactivated. Some report a tingling warmth spreading from the center of the chest outward, the divine spark beginning to radiate through the body's energy centers. But here is where the path becomes treacherous. The moment you begin to remember your true nature, the archonic influence intensifies. Strange synchronicities may appear to distract you. Doubts arise. The people around you may suddenly seem hostile to your awakening. Physical discomforts manifest. These reactions aren't coincidental. They're systematic responses to your breaking free from the perceptual prison. The Nag Hammadi texts describe this phenomenon explicitly. When the soul becomes strong and perceives the divine light, then the counterfeit spirit becomes jealous and manifests obstacles. Blavatsky herself experienced this resistance throughout her life, facing relentless persecution, character assassination, and physical ailments that mysteriously intensified whenever her work gained momentum. This resistance takes many forms, but its most insidious manifestation is doubt, not healthy skepticism, but the paralyzing doubt that undermines your trust in your own direct experience. You might find yourself thinking, "This is just my imagination. I'm being delusional. I should focus on practical matters instead." Recognize these thoughts for what they are. Archonic interference patterns designed to redirect your attention away from the remembering process. They fear nothing more than a human being who fully recalls their divine nature, for such a being becomes immune to manipulation and energetic harvesting. The first key to dismantling this interference is simple awareness. When you observe a thought without identifying with it, asking, "Is this really my thought? Does it serve my highest good?" you create a space between yourself and the thought form. In that space, that observer's perspective, the divine spark can begin to radiate more fully. What you're experiencing now, reading these words, is not mere intellectual understanding. It's the first stirring of remembrance, the initial dissolving of the amnesia that has kept your divine nature hidden from you. If this is making sense to you, if you're feeling that resonance of recognition deep within, comment your thoughts below and share this video. There are others in your life who are ready for this awakening, souls who have been waiting for permission to remember. In our next chapter, we'll explore how these archonic influences manifest in your daily life, often in ways so subtle you've accepted them as normal. The genius of the archonic system, as Blavatsky discovered through her studies of ancient Gnostic texts, is its invisibility. Unlike physical chains that chafe and announce their presence, mental and perceptual prisons feel natural, even comfortable, to those who've never known anything else. This architecture of forgetting has specific structures, each designed to prevent the recognition of your divine spark. First is what the Gnostics called haimarmene, predetermined fate or cosmic destiny. This manifests today as the belief that you are merely a biological machine, a product of random genetic accidents and environmental conditioning with no higher purpose. Materialist science, divorced from its mystical roots, often serves as the enforcer of this perspective, reducing consciousness itself to a byproduct of brain chemistry. Blavatsky fiercely opposed this reductionism, recognizing it as an archonic strategy to sever humans from their spiritual heritage. Second is the inversion of values, what Gnostics called antimaimon pneuma, or counterfeit spirit. This operates by making the artificial seem natural and the natural seem artificial. In our modern context, it's the subtle programming that values virtual connection over physical presence, synthetic pleasures over natural joy, abstraction over direct experience. It's the voice that says, looking at a screen for hours is normal, while sitting quietly in nature is wasting time. Third is the fragmentation of consciousness, the creation of artificial divisions within the unified field of awareness. The Archons maintain control by keeping different aspects of yourself separated and in conflict. Rational mind versus intuition, conscious desires versus unconscious drives, social persona versus private self. This inner fragmentation prevents the coherent energy required for full awakening. Fourth, and perhaps most powerful, is what Blavatsky called the great forgetting, the amnesia regarding your own divine nature that begins in childhood and deepens with age. Think about it. Young children naturally display qualities of presence, wonder, and direct perception. They haven't yet learned to doubt their inner knowing. The systematic conditioning we call growing up often involves the gradual surrendering of these qualities in exchange for social acceptance and the illusion of security. These are not abstract philosophical concepts, but practical realities that shape your daily experience. The heaviness you feel upon waking to an alarm, the subtle anxiety that accompanies checking social media, the nagging sense that something essential is missing despite external achievements. These are symptoms of living within the archonic architecture. Blavatsky's genius was recognizing that this system doesn't require conscious conspiracy to function. Once established, it becomes self-perpetuating through human participation. We unwittingly maintain our own prison through habits of perception and behavior that reinforce our forgetting. But here's where hope enters. This system, powerful as it is, remains vulnerable to one thing: conscious awareness. Like a spell that breaks when named, the archonic influences begin to dissolve when directly perceived. The simple act of recognizing these patterns in your own life creates micro-fissures in the perceptual prison. These fissures allow the light of your divine spark to shine through, illuminating the artificial nature of the constraints you've accepted as reality. Here we arrive at the crucial turning point in Blavatsky's Gnostic revelation, the dynamic tension between imprisonment and liberation, between the false light of the Archons and the true light of the divine spark. This is where the path divides, where the sleepwalkers continue their unconscious journey, while the awakening souls recognize the choice before them. The Archons, these cosmic mind parasites, maintain their influence through reflection. They show you distorted images of yourself and reality that you accept as true. Imagine standing before a carnival mirror that stretches and warps your appearance. If that's the only mirror you've ever known, you might believe that distorted reflection is your actual form. The Archonic influence operates similarly, presenting you with a distorted self-image, limited, separate, inadequate, forever seeking but never finding. Man is the mirror of the universe, wrote Blavatsky, but if the mirror is clouded or cracked, how can it reflect truth? The clouding of this mirror occurs through what modern psychology might call conditioning, but which the Gnostics recognized as something far more deliberate, a systematic distortion of human perception to prevent the recognition of our divine nature. The contrast here is stark and consequential, the false light of the Archons versus the true light of the divine spark. The false light glitters and fascinates, but leaves you emptier with each pursuit. It's the light of external validation, material acquisition, status, power over others, a light that casts shadows even as it claims to illuminate. The true light, by contrast, radiates from within. It doesn't demand or deplete. It simply reveals what has always been there beneath the illusions. How do you distinguish between these lights? By their fruits, as an ancient teacher once said. The false light creates dependency. You need constant external input to maintain your sense of self-worth and purpose. The true light generates autonomy. The more you connect with it, the less you need from outside yourself. The false light intensifies separation and comparison. The true light reveals the underlying unity of all consciousness. The false light leaves you fearful of silence and solitude. The true light makes these states profoundly nourishing. This understanding creates a pivotal moment of choice. Will you continue to orient yourself by the reflections in a distorted mirror, or will you turn toward the original light source within? This isn't a one-time decision, but a moment-by-moment practice of redirecting attention from the periphery to the center, from the fluctuating to the constant, from the borrowed to the inherent. The Archons bet on your distraction, on your forgetting to make this choice consciously. They've constructed an environment of perpetual noise and movement, precisely to prevent the still awareness in which their influence dissolves. Each notification, each breaking news alert, each manufactured crisis serves this purpose, keeping your attention externalized and fragmented rather than centered and whole. If this content is opening your mind, subscribe now to the channel to avoid missing the next chapters of this journey. The revelations become more powerful and practical as we proceed. Now we stand at the threshold of the hidden secret, the Gnostic method Blavatsky uncovered for dissolving the Archonic spell once and for all. Now we arrive at the hidden heart of Helena Blavatsky's Gnostic revelation, the precise method for dissolving the Archonic influence. This technique is deceptively simple, yet profoundly effective, requiring no complex rituals, no special equipment, no intermediaries, only the directed power of your own consciousness. The method begins with a radical premise. The Archons require your unconscious participation to maintain their influence. They need you to remain identified with the thoughts, emotions, and sensations they introduce into your field of awareness. The moment you step back and observe these phenomena without identification, their power begins to wane. This is not positive thinking or affirmation. It's something far more fundamental, the activation of what Blavatsky called the watcher at the threshold, the aspect of consciousness that can observe mental activity without becoming entangled in it. Modern mindfulness practices offer a diluted version of this ancient technique, but the Gnostic approach Blavatsky uncovered goes deeper, recognizing the cosmic dimensions of this observer perspective. In practical terms, the dissolution method works like this. When a disturbing thought, emotion, or sensation arises, rather than resisting it or identifying with it, you consciously observe it with the silent acknowledgement, "I see you." This simple act creates a crucial separation between your essential awareness and the content appearing within it. In that space of separation, the Archonic thought form loses its energetic sustenance. The Nag Hammadi texts describe this process explicitly. When you make the two one, and when you make the inner as the outer and the outer as the inner, then shall you enter the kingdom. This cryptic passage refers precisely to the unification of the observer and the observed, not through identification, but through conscious recognition of their underlying unity. As you practice this method, you'll notice something startling. Certain thoughts and emotional patterns that you've always accepted as just how I am begin to feel foreign, as if they're being projected into your awareness rather than arising from it. This uncanny recognition that you've been hosting energies and impulses that aren't truly yours marks the beginning of true Gnostic awakening. The process intensifies as your practice deepens. Dreams become more vivid and meaningful, often featuring symbols of imprisonment and escape. Synchronicities multiply in your waking life. You may experience unusual bodily sensations as energetic blockages, what the Gnostics called archonic knots, begin to dissolve. These are all signs of the archonic programming breaking down as your divine spark expands its radiance through your being. The most powerful application of this method occurs during moments of fear, anger, or craving, the primary emotional states through which archonic influence operates. When you feel gripped by these emotions, the simple act of stepping back into the observer position and saying inwardly, "I see you, but you are not me," initiates an alchemical transformation. The emotion doesn't necessarily disappear, but your identification with it does, revealing the clear light of awareness that remains undisturbed behind all emotional weather. Like this video right now, as this helps tremendously to spread this message to those who need to hear it. The Archons would prefer these methods remain obscure. Your engagement helps ensure they don't. In our next chapter, we'll explore how this ancient Gnostic practice translates into modern daily life. The ancient Gnostic wisdom Blavatsky uncovered isn't meant to remain theoretical. It's a living practice for navigating our complex modern world. Let's bring this teaching down to earth and examine how archonic influences manifest in contemporary life and how the dissolution method applies in practical situations. Consider your relationship with technology. Smartphones, social media, and constant connectivity aren't inherently problematic, but they've become perfect vehicles for archonic influence, fragmenting attention, creating addiction loops, and keeping consciousness externalized rather than centered. The average American checks their phone 344 times daily, approximately once every 4 minutes. Each check creates a new opportunity for thought insertion and emotional manipulation. The Gnostic response isn't rejection of technology, but conscious usage. When you feel the compulsive urge to check your device, apply the dissolution method. Observe the urge without identifying with it, saying inwardly, "I see you." Notice how the intensity of the compulsion diminishes under the light of awareness. This simple practice begins to restore sovereignty over your attention, the most precious resource in an information economy. Similarly, examine modern consumer culture through the Gnostic lens. The relentless messaging that you're incomplete without the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next status symbol. These are modern manifestations of what the Gnostics called archontic implants. Thought forms designed to create artificial desires that keep you externally focused and internally empty. When you feel that familiar ache of wanting, the subtle discontent that drives consumption, bring the dissolution method to bear. Observe the sensation without judgment, neither suppressing it nor acting on it. "I see you," you might acknowledge, watching how the desire begins to lose its compelling force when held in awareness. Even interpersonal conflicts take on new meaning through this understanding. When someone triggers intense reaction in you, consider that the buttons being pushed are not random. They're precisely the interface points where archonic programming has been installed in your psyche. Your disproportionate reactions, those moments when you feel possessed by emotion, are opportunities to identify and dissolve these foreign influences. The most direct application comes in moments of fear, particularly the existential fears of insignificance, abandonment, and death that drive so much unconscious behavior. When fear arises, rather than being consumed by its narrative, step back into the observer position. Feel its physical signature in your body while recognizing, this is a sensation appearing in my awareness, not what I am. In that recognition, the archonic grip loosens. This is gnosis, not as ancient history, but as lived reality in the here and now. You've now arrived at a critical juncture in the Gnostic journey Blavatsky illuminated, the moment of choice that determines whether the teachings remain intellectual curiosities or become transformative forces in your life. This choice hinges on a quality the ancient Gnostics prized above all others: courage. Not physical bravery, but something far more profound: the courage to sustain conscious awareness even when every programmed impulse urges you to return to sleep, to distraction, to the familiar comfort of forgetting. The courage to face the void that opens when you begin dismantling the archonic thought structures that have defined your sense of self and reality. Make no mistake, this path is not for the faint of heart. As you apply the dissolution method, as you consistently withdraw your identification from the thought forms and emotional patterns the Archons have installed, you will inevitably face what the Gnostics called the Great Emptiness, a transitional state where the old self is dissolving, but the divine spark hasn't yet fully illuminated your being. In this emptiness, the archonic influence often launches its most powerful counterattack. Doubts intensify. This is nonsense. I'm wasting my time. I need practical solutions, not spiritual abstractions. Physical symptoms may appear, fatigue, headaches, digestive issues, as the energetic patterns shift. Relationships may become strained as others unconsciously react to your changing frequencies. Financial or health crises might mysteriously manifest, forcing your attention back into survival mode where awareness contracts and the archonic influence can reassert itself. These reactions aren't accidental. They're systematic responses to your awakening. The Nag Hammadi texts warn explicitly that when the soul begins to mount toward the higher spheres, the rulers and authorities become envious and send obstacles. Blavatsky herself faced these obstacles throughout her life, enduring poverty, illness, and relentless character assassination precisely because her work threatened archonic control systems. This is where your choice crystallizes. Will you retreat into the familiar sleep when challenges arise? Or will you summon the courage to maintain awareness through the discomfort, trusting the process of dissolution and remembrance even when temporary circumstances suggest it isn't working? The courage to choose consciousness isn't a one-time decision, but a moment-by-moment commitment to remain awake when everything in your conditioned self screams for anesthesia, whether through distraction, intoxication, rationalization, or simply giving up the practice as impractical. And you, which path would you choose? Comment your perspective below. I truly want to read what you think. Your articulation of this choice is itself an act of power that strengthens your commitment to the path of remembrance. As your Gnostic practice deepens, you inevitably approach what mystics across traditions have called the dark night of the soul, the final confrontation with the archonic programming that has defined your reality. This is the threshold where intellectual understanding transforms into embodied gnosis, where concept becomes direct experience, where the dissolution of illusion reaches its most intense phase before breakthrough. Helena Blavatsky described this stage as facing the dweller on the threshold, confronting the accumulated shadow aspects that have operated beneath conscious awareness. These aren't personal failings, but the very interface points where archonic influence has maintained its grip on your perception and behavior. This confrontation often manifests as a period of intensified dreams, unexpected emotional upheavals, and a profound questioning of everything you've believed about yourself and reality. The solid ground of your former identity seems to dissolve beneath you. Relationships, career paths, and belief systems that once seemed essential may suddenly feel hollow or constraining. This disorientation isn't pathological. It's the necessary dismantling of artificial constructs before the emergence of authentic being. During this phase, you may experience what the Gnostics called the Great Reversal, a complete inversion of values and perceptions. What once seemed important becomes trivial. What you previously overlooked reveals profound significance. External achievements lose their luster, while simple moments of presence take on unexpected depth. This reversal isn't a rejection of the world, but a radical reorientation to it, seeing through rather than with the eyes, as one Gnostic text expresses it. The most challenging aspect of this confrontation is the experience of cosmic isolation. As the veils thin between dimensions of consciousness, you may perceive the vast architecture of the archonic system, what the Gnostics called the kenoma, or empty cosmos, the elaborate illusion that has passed for reality. In this perception comes a temporary but profound aloneness as you stand between worlds, no longer fully identified with the dream, but not yet fully established in awakened consciousness. This is the moment when many seekers retreat, unable to bear the existential vertigo of seeing through the constructed nature of reality. the familiar prison cell begins to look appealing compared to the vast unknown that beckons beyond its walls. The Archons exploit this fear, intensifying feelings of inadequacy, abnormality, and danger to discourage the final steps toward liberation. But if you maintain awareness through this confrontation, something remarkable awaits just beyond, the ultimate revelation that transforms everything. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. The awakening of each individual strengthens the field of remembrance for all. We arrive now at the culmination of Helena Blavatsky's Gnostic revelation, the moment of remembrance that transforms the seeker from prisoner to sovereign being. This isn't an achievement or acquisition, but a recognition of what has always been true beneath the layers of forgetting and distortion. When the dissolution method has been applied consistently, when the courage to face the void has been sustained through the dark night, something extraordinary occurs. The divine spark that the Archons could never touch begins to radiate outward, illuminating your entire being with its uncreated light. This isn't metaphorical. Those who experience this awakening describe it as a tangible brightness that seems to shine from within, transforming perception and presence. In this remembering, the archonic influence doesn't need to be fought or resisted. It simply dissolves in the presence of a greater reality, like shadows vanishing when the light is turned on. The thought forms and emotional patterns that once seemed so compelling, so essentially you, are revealed as foreign programs that can no longer operate within your heightened frequency of awareness. This awakening isn't an escape from the world, but a radical re-engagement with it. Colors appear more vivid, sensations more immediate, relationships more authentic. The divine spark recognizes itself in everything and everyone, dissolving the illusion of separation that fuels conflict and suffering. This is what the Gnostic texts call living in the fullness, experiencing reality directly without the filtering mechanisms of the archonic system. Blavatsky understood that this awakening was never meant to be the privilege of a spiritual elite, but the birthright of every human being. The Archons maintain their influence through the fragmentation of humanity, keeping awakening souls isolated from each other. But when individuals remember their true nature and connect with others doing the same, a resonance field is created that strengthens and accelerates the collective awakening. This is the ultimate threat to archonic control, not opposition or resistance, but simple remembrance that spreads from person to person, dissolving the amnesia that has kept humanity enslaved to illusion for millennia. If you followed this journey to its conclusion, subscribe to the channel, leave your like and share in the comments what has most impacted you in this exploration. Your conscious engagement creates ripples of awakening that extend far beyond what you can see. The remembering has begun, the light is spreading, and nothing can stop it now.